Beyond shadows. Russia's open assault on NATO. This is what we will gonna talk about today. And about the Helsinki Commission's latest hearing, which is unveils the Kremlin's covert operations aimed at destabilizing Europe. From sabotage to assassinations, Russia is actively waging a shadow war on NATO, which is, in my opinion, is open war, but this is what the title was of the hearing. We will watch top experts explain the threats and what the West must do to counter them. Plus to this, I can provide my own information, which I was talking about it way longer than these people are in this hearing, and I only can applaud that finally they can see the threat for what it is. Let's dive into it. Hello there, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share, let's make truth available for everyone. Thank you for coming. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014, the US and NATO have sought to avoid direct conflict by limiting Ukraine's military aid. Particularly lately, they're talking about not allowing to use Ukraine to use long-range weapons. However, Russia has long been waging a shadow war against the democratic world, following the path of the USSR. Through assassinations, election interference, and sabotage, they aim to destabilize NATO and undermine transatlantic security. The Kremlin escalating actions, including attacks on critical energy infrastructure in Ukraine and in other countries and NATO countries as well, and defense sectors, alongside military provocations within NATO borders, demonstrate that Russia is operating on a war footing and unwilling to engage in a good faith diplomacy. The Helsinki Commission hearing examines the scope of Russia's hybrid warfare tactics, the impact on NATO security, strategies to effectively counter these threats. Recent provocations include violations of NATO airspace and aggressive military exercises near Estonia. I should say that during all this time, the war in Ukraine is going on for over 10 years. Violations of airspace and provocations was happening almost weekly, if not daily, from Russian side. This is actually the map which provided during the hearing. Non-exhaustive illustration of Russian hybrid operations on NATO territory over the past year. So this is only in the past year. These are the Russian attacks basically on NATO territories. This is a fresh example, which is on September 23rd, 2024 happened, when a Russian plane basically headbutts American plane, when Russia invading American airspace. So situations like this occurred many times in the past, especially in the last 10 years. This is nothing new. So Russia using a lot of tactics. This is a Helsinki Commission Congressional hearing. What's important about this? This is one of the most important things to know at this point in time. Basically, at the hearing, 3 distinguished witnesses provided crucial insight into these Russian tactics. In the description to the video, you can read about the witnesses very closely because this is important. These people are very credible sources of information because they professionally dealing with this type of stuff. One of them, Mr. Erkki Tori, if I pronounce his name correctly, National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Estonia. Another one is Dr. Benjamin L. Schmidt, Senior Fellow, Department of Physics and Astronomy in Kleinman Center for Energy Policy, University of Pennsylvania. He actually a physicist and literally personally visited several places in Europe and know things from first hand. And another one is very important witness. This is Michael Weiss. I want to talk about him a little bit more than about other people. He not just investigative journalist and an author. He focusing on Middle East and Russia. He has covered the wars in Syria and Ukraine and published widely on Russian espionage and disinformation. His first book, ISIS Inside the Army of Terror, was a New York Times bestseller and named one of the top 10 books on terrorism by the Wall Street Journal, as well as one of the best books of 2015 by the Times of London. He is an editor of The Insider and a director of special investigation at Free Russia Foundation. This is why he knows a lot about those covert operations, because the Insider did lots of research, and I'll show you the article of the Insider when they did huge investigations and proved Russian GRU involvement and so on. This is why in only one his testimony, just in one, he covered almost everything what you need to know about Russian covert operations. And in addition of Mr. Schmidt, Dr. Schmidt, you will see the whole picture, how it all was. Before I find out who he was and that he is actually from Insider. Now I know why he is so competent about it, because the Insider did a lot of investigations themselves. In his testimony, Michael Weiss highlights the ongoing covert war that Russia has waged across NATO and EU territories for nearly 20 years, focusing on the acts of sabotage, espionage, and assassinations carried out by Russian operatives, primarily from the GRU's Unit 29-155 and the FSB. Weiss provided several concrete examples of these activities, tracing Russia's escalations through major events, individuals, and incidents.
No further opening statements. We will immediately proceed to Mr. Michael Weiss.
There's nothing shadowy about what's been going on for nearly 20 years. It's war that Russia has been waging across NATO and EU territory. And there's some notable features, I think, that we can define.
I suggest you listen to whole his testimony. I just provide key elements and figures. First of all, Alexander Litvinenko's poisoning in 2006, which was one of the most notorious operations, which was the FSB assassination of former Russian spy Litvinenko using a radioactive isotope. His killers left traces of the substance across London, Hamburg, Germany, and on commercial flights. One of the men involved in this is now a member of Russian parliament. Second, GRU Unit 2955. This elite black ops unit is responsible for a series of violent attacks and sabotage operations in Europe, and Weiss singles out two major of them, and this is the original investigation by the Insider. One of them is Bulgarian ammunition storage bombing in 2011, which Russia bombed a storage facility in Lovindol, Bulgaria, destroying ammunition designed for Georgia and Ukraine. And the second one was a Czech Republic storage explosion in 2014, when the Unit 2955 blew up 50 metric tons of ammunition in Vrebetse, intended for Ukraine and Syrian rebels. The attack caused secondary blasts, delaying rescue efforts for 10 days. This article provides all the necessary information with full investigation, who were behind this operation, who did it, how they ended up there, how it happened, how they left, and so on. Lovindon bombing, and that's a different attacks of different times in Bulgaria, for example, and some other countries. I made a video on this based on also statements of Hristo Grozev, famous investigator, and it was published in 2023 in November. You're welcome to see that as well. So I'm not just listening to these people, I'm investigating who they are, and whatever Mr. Weiss said, I confirmed myself during my years of research. Number three, the point he's making is he was talking about assassinations and poisonings. One of them, also in this article I just showed you, Emelian Gebrev, 2015. The GRU targeted this Bulgarian arms dealer and his son, as well as factory manager, with Novichok-like substance. And Gebrev has been supplying, because Gebrev had been supplying weapons to Ukraine and Georgia. This is that Bulgarian arms dealer, Emelian Gebrev. This is the information of GRU, in case you don't know what it is. Another assassination was attempted assassination was Sergei and Yulia Skripal in 2018, which the same GRU agents who attacked Gebrev later poisoned the Skripals in Salisbury, UK, using Novichok, a nerve agent.
That was 3 years before they would use actual Novichok to poison Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury, a quaint English cathedral town. The two poisoners in that operation, Alexander Mishkin and Anatoly Chepiga, were in fact the guys who blew up the Czech storage facility in Vebrice in 2015. So notice a pattern. They keep returning to the scenes of their crimes. They keep recycling the same operatives to do all kinds of other operations, including assassinations.
These are the pictures of Alexander Mishkin and Anatoly Chepiga, the journalist is talking about just now. Another victim of Russian assassination is Zelimkhan Khangashvili. In 2019 it happened. An FSB assassin, and not just an assassin, but the famous favorite assassin of Putin, Vadim Krasikov, killed this Chechen dissident in broad daylight in Berlin Tiergarten Park. Krasikov's value to Putin was so high that he was traded back to Russia in a promise of exchange for Russian oppositional leader Alexei Navalny. I have videos about this. Later, Navalny was killed by Putin and have not been used in the exchange. But Krasikov was successfully traded in a recent prisoner exchange when regular Russian dissidents and hostages taken by Russia were exchanged on actual criminals like Krasikov. Vadim Krasikov, so-called killer on the bike, he was exchanged very recently in exchange with several people when Russian political leaders, kind of like Karamurza or Yashin, and several other people were exchanged. And Krasikov was one of the key figures Putin wanted to have back. Number 4, if to talk about interference in the elections, it's not just United States election. It's, for example, Montenegro coup attempt in 2016, when one of the agents involved in Gebrev's poisoning also led an attempted coup in Montenegro just before the country's accession to NATO. Mr. Weiss also pointed out point number 5, sabotage across Europe. Russian operatives have set fires to infrastructure in various NATO countries and carried out other attacks. Some examples include shopping center in Warsaw, IKEA warehouse in Vilnius, bus depot in Prague, factory in Berlin, and the map shows Russian hybrid operations across NATO territories in the past year. Number 6, new tactics. This is what Mr. Weiss pointed out. As traditional Russian agents face travel restrictions and exposure, they are shifting tactics. Now operatives recruit individuals remotely, often through platforms like Telegram, paying them in cryptocurrency to carry out sabotage for as little as 400 euros. So basically, the people, the citizens of the country, sabotage in their own country for a few bucks or euros. Point number 7, Latvian network. Weiss mentioned the investigation into a network of Latvian youth recruited by the GRU to carry out acts like firebombing military facilities and defacing NATO institutions with pro-Russian graffiti. Number 8, Kirill Griznov's arrest in 2023. This FSB agent, posing as a chef and a social media influencer, boasted when he would get drunk about plans to execute a major operation in Paris ahead of Summer Olympics. And he got arrested. Weiss underscores how these Russian activities spanning sabotage, assassinations and subversion are a continuation of tactics used by the GRU since its inception in 1918.
So the tradecraft isn't new. What's new is the technological capability. And I'm sorry to say, I think the West has been very non-vigilant in paying attention to these operations. I mean, much of what we know by looking in the rearview mirror going back, again, over a decade. And we're still piecing together things that these guys have got up to. And the scary part is not what we know they've done, it's what we don't know they've done yet. Assassinations, fire bombings, sabotage operations that have yet to be documented.
On top of this, constant Russian propaganda include buying foreign influencers like Tenet Media, for example. This is the video of Jake Bro. I'll probably make a video on my own about this. But this is the recent thing, September 2024. The Department of Justice has indicted Russian nationals Konstantin Kalashnikov and Yelena Afanasieva with conspiracy to violate the Foreign Agents Restrictions Act, Registration Act, FARA, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. They worked for RT News and funneled $10 million to Canadian influencer Lauren Chen and her husband Liam Donovan to create an American-based media company to promote Russia and Donald Trump and weaken support for Ukraine. Tenet Media then paid right-wing influencers such as Tim Pool and so on to promote Trump and Russia to their already large audiences on social media to affect the outcome of 2024 election. This testimony, Russian attacks on energy infrastructure, testimony by Dr. Benjamin L. Schmidt, is very important as well. His testimony focuses on Russia's continued weaponization of energy infrastructure in both Ukraine and NATO countries. He highlights Russia's deliberate sabotage attacks on energy systems across Europe, including crucial incidents involving Russian vessels damaging cables and pipelines in Norway, Finland, and Germany. Dr. Schmidt is providing the facts and evidence of his own witnessing different operations in different places where he actually has been.
I visited the Brunsbüttel LNG terminal in Germany. Construction of that terminal was meant to reduce Germany's energy dependence on Russia. But in late 2023, an onshore pipeline meant to connect the terminal to the German grid was found drilled through. And just last month, just a few weeks ago, Russian military-grade intelligence drones were spotted flying over the terminal. These examples join dozens of others that have taken place in recent months, from an explosives cache with detonators found deliberately buried next to the NATO pipeline network just south of Heidelberg, Germany, to incidents in Poland, the Czech Republic, France, and the United Kingdom, where attribution has been made against Russian actors as well as non-Russian nationals that have been hired online on social media, on Telegram, by Russia's military intelligence, or the GRU. Commissioners, it is time that NATO leaders turn the table on the Putin regime in terms of its hybrid warfare campaign and move from Russia's summer of sabotage to NATO's autumn of action.
He emphasizes the need for the US and NATO to act decisively by supporting Ukraine's air defense and long-range strike capabilities, invoking NATO Article 4, extending sanctions on Nord Stream 2, and ending former US officials' work for adversaries like Russia. He calls for stronger measures to counter Russia's hybrid warfare against crucial infrastructure. And this is my article about a ship full of explosives. Is this Putin's new threat or a Russian fishing expedition for the weaknesses of the West? So basically the Russian ship, full of explosives, 20,000 tons of ammonium nitrate, 7 to 10 times the amount of the 2020 Beirut explosion, which was one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history and far bigger than any conventional weapon, is stranded near Kent coast. So it was hanging around Norway, the military and oil patches and so on. So, under false pretenses, Russia packed the ship full of explosives and sent it to Europe to hang around special places which could be crucial and important for the war in Ukraine, for example. And like around Lithuania, around Norway, and so on. This is just one of examples of Russians' threats and black ops. And the third is very important testimony by Estonia's National Security Advisor, Mr. Tori. Testimony on Russia's threat to the West. Estonia's National Security Advisor, Tori, discusses Russia's hybrid warfare, which includes sabotage, disinformation, and physical attacks on NATO countries, with Estonia being a primary target. Tori highlights a coordinated Russian operation in 2023 that attacked Estonian property, including that of government minister. And I can add that Estonia really suffered from Russian attacks, from cyberattacks and a bunch of others.
As of today, those responsible for the attacks have been prosecuted. Estonia's approach is to stay calm and confident, but vigilant. Russia's activities are not limited to NATO border countries like Estonia. Similar methods are used more broadly across Europe and beyond. My message is clear. These acts should not be dismissed as minor or one-time acts of hooliganism. These are intentional actions demonstrating that Russia considers itself in a war with the West. Recognizing and responding to Russia's hybrid activities is crucial, as doing nothing encourages Russia to continue and escalate its actions.
He stresses the need for the West to recognize Russia's shadow war and respond decisively, proposing a common strategy with NATO and the EU, focusing on 3 A's: acknowledgement, assessment, and attribution of Russian offenses. Estonia remains committed to strengthening its defenses and urges swift international action to counter Russia's aggression. I encourage you to watch the whole hearing. This is very important. I'm glad that finally some countries started to realize the Russian threat and Russian actions and Russian aggression against NATO countries, and finally started to listen to countries like Estonia who experienced it long ago. And I was commenting on it and talking about it and saw it during all these last 10 years, over 10 years of the war in Ukraine and so on. And I can confirm what these men are saying. This is true. We need to know that, we need to stop Putin, and we need to be decisive about this. Because Putin sees us as a weakness, not as a trying not to escalate, not as a trying to be nice to him or this and that. He sees us as a weakness. When he sees the weakness, he attacks. The more attacks are coming, and they will, especially in front of American election, which is coming in November. We need to be vigilant, and these men are providing the how to do it and how to go about it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. Learn the truth and stay informed. See you later.